I know Chigs is in here recording or some shit.
No Chid Smooth in here, right? So whatever you
Oh,
say,
so you know Che gonna have everything up there.
whatever you say, Chid's gonna be on YouTube with it, man. I like you.
Come on.
You know, a lot of the contemporaries that I have spoken about this DJ academic statement. And originally I didn't think I'd have anything to add. I think that Al and I think that Fat Joe did a really good job. And I think Russell did a really good job. I do have one thing, and I don't know if this is gonna put some sort of twist on it. It might not, but you know, Fat Joe said something about being in the Mecca of hip hop, that his older brother used to carry crates for Flash, and that, you know, he was a little angel. And, you know, a lot of us who we're lucky enough to come from that era, come from New York during the 80s. There was no such thing, you know, as hip hop. Grand Mixer DST has said it really eloquently that, you know, when we were coming up, there was just writing on the wall, DJing in the parks, dancing on the floor, and guys on the mics telling people that their moms was looking for them, or the guy with the, you know, blue Volare, the police were gonna tow your car. That was MCing, DJing, graffiti, and breakdancing. There was no such thing as hip hop when we were all coming up. But I did want to just make one observation in everybody's breakdown of this, because I agree with everyone that the architects should be respected, and that the architects of this culture and pioneers in general, whether you're a pioneer in hip hop music or you're a pioneer in the internet, pioneers historically don't make the same money that everyone else does because they are the first. So when you're the first, you don't have the luxury of the business being fully formed, right? So 50 years later, now coming up to the 50th anniversary of this culture that we call hip hop, it is the largest music genre in the world, and it has evolved to where people like this dude can have a platform where he never rhymes, he never makes a beat, he never dances, he never does graffiti, but he can critique and he can be a voice like a Johnny Carson or a Jay Leno or an Arsenio Hall. He can have a voice, and that voice allows him to talk about this culture that we built and allows him a living. But I did want to make one observation, because I'm hearing a lot of people talk about the architects. And the architects of this culture, when I remember them, you know, were these crews, the Force MDs and the Kango crew, and, you know, Fearless 4, Funky 4 plus one more, and obviously Sugar Hill Gang. You know, one of the things that was a part of this culture was the materialism. And that was just a part of the early goings. You know, Sugar Hill Gang, I had a big long Cadillac Laxville written right on the side. It said Dress to Kill. You know, we were talking about going to clubs, about, you know, having pockets of money, you know. So there was a materialism in the early parts of the culture. But that does not mean capitalism. right? That just means we will fly. And I say this to say that, if the argument is that, these early pioneers were talking about money, but now where's their money now? I just felt it was important to say, the way Elle said it so eloquently, it was never about money. It was about flash. It was about being someone in the neighborhood that people looked up to, not just because of what you wore, but how you said what you had. There was a style, there was a flash, there was a panache, there was a charisma. Slick Rick about, wearing, Bally's and, Polo Cologne and on Lottie Dottie and, obviously Rakim, had incredible style and Dapper Dan and, so there was a level of materialism in this culture early on. But that does not give anyone the misnomer to say that because of what that was, where's their money now? Because the truth of the matter is there was no money. We were doing it because we loved doing it. And it was the growth of what we did that allowed us to benefit. And Fat Joe said something really that stuck with me. He said that, very few of the people that came up during that era were able to sustain and continue to make a living. And the truth of the matter is that a lot of us didn't understand how to be flexible. A lot of us were stuck. But I would not be where I am without Coca La Rock. I would not be where I am without DJ Hollywood. I would not be where I am without Kango Crew, without Ricky D, without Dana Dane. I would not be where I am without Lord Scotch, AKA Keo, the first white rapper I ever saw. I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for those people. Just the same way this gentleman, AKADEMIKS, would not be where he is without Ed Lover. He would not be where he is without the people that came before him. I'm very thankful. And I say it to everybody that I ever meet. I'm very clear that if it wasn't for hip hop, the only time you would meet me is when you'd be coming into Nordstrom and I'd be asking your wife if she'd like that in a black or brown in a size 7 or an 8. I'd be a shoe salesman. I owe this culture everything. I owe hip hop my life. I owe it my children, my wife, my family. I owe this culture everything. And I would never, ever, ever disrespect the founding fathers of this culture. My hope, and Russell said this really well, my hope is that this gentleman makes it to our age. So when someone makes a comment about him, he'll remember this. And that he'll be able to step up and respect the guys that were the early podcasters that came up around him, like The Daily Struggle, because AKADEMIKS would be nothing without Joe Budden. He'd be nothing without Complex. He'd be nothing without Mark Echo. He'd be nothing without Echo Unlimited, which I helped build. So if you don't pay respect to those who came before you, then you can't really have the career that you want. And you can't have the growth, the acceptance, and the success if you just don't give this the love and the appreciation it deserves. And while I do understand there was a level of flash and there was a level of talking about money and there was a level of talking about clothes and cars and being fly, that does not give you any right to disrespect those that built this, that were the foundation of this culture. Because there was no culture, there was no business known as hip hop. There was nothing. All right? And that's where I'm gonna leave that.